Welcome back to the Mighty Fuzz Podcast. If you haven't subscribed to the Mighty Fuzz Podcast, we are on YouTube and Rumble at Mighty Fuzz Podcast. Episode 32, part 2 with my brother from another, Shane Clark. Welcome, Shane.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for having me and running it back with me. I know there's a lot of information to digest, so excited to get back into it with you.
Awesome, man. We had such a good part 1, a lot of great information, and I like that we're breaking this stuff up. Today, we agreed on basically focusing on the 14th Amendment, what it really meant, understanding where people may think what the 14th Amendment might mean, but we're going to go into a different understanding today. How does that sound?
Sounds great, man. Yeah, it's a topic that's been misconstrued over time, and something that we've been indoctrinated to, generationally just be proud to be a citizen and stuff like that. But in terms of banking, it means a little bit different than we were taught.
I would like to, Crystal's going to put up the 14th Amendment. I would like to read Section 1 real quick, just so people have an idea of the 14th Amendment. Section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof and citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the law. Now, anybody just reading that is going to be like, what's the problem with that, Shane? What's the problem with that?
Well, the problem is this, they say that it's the Equal Rights Act, but it's equal privileges. So privileges are corporate bylaws that are confined to entities of that corporation. Right. They're privileges. They're not rights. Rights are different than privileges. And, it talks about persons, right? Persons are legal entities. So that's what we're dealing with here. Through the birth registration process, we are pledged as citizens. And, it basically, it essentially gives the baby up as a ward of the state and creates an entity for them that they'll operate as, right? That Social Security number that's created, and so it's privileges for that entity, and it's not rights for the natural person or the living man or woman.
And I think that's where the cunning maneuver is with wording, and most people are going to say, "I'm proud to be a citizen. I'm proud to be a citizen. What's wrong with being an American citizen?" What is the problem with the word citizen?
Right. So you're not an American citizen, you're a U.S. citizen, and that is a corporate entity that they created, right? So essentially, before the incorporation of the United States, we were all separate states of the Union. So you were a citizen of your state, but that's it. If you look at the original Constitution, there's a capital C. That is a proper noun. So it had more weight, right? Grammar is very important in law. And it got degraded to a lowercase c on the 14th Amendment, and that has to do with federal citizenship. So instead of saying I'm a party to my state constitution and I'm a citizen of New Jersey, for example, for me, and that's the state of the Union, New Jersey, not the state of New Jersey, because that is also a corporation. We become subjects of the corporate bylaws of the United States, which is a federal corporation, 28 United States Code 3002, subsection 15.
And that's where I think, we go into people feeling that the government is kind of a nanny state, but we're a just better nanny state than the other countries. If you don't like it here, go move over there, right? That's what it's commonly said. And it's like, no, actually.
Yeah, actually, they listen to us. We're living in a feudal state right now, right? Where, okay, so that creates an entity, right? Where your all caps name, your social. You hear people talk about this stuff, but the thing is that you're not that entity. You can't be that entity. That entity is what is pledged as collateral for the national debt since we came off the gold. So the projected labor off that entity is what is backing the debt. So it sounds more like you're the creditor, right? Well, they have us pinged as the debtor. Okay, so they put that all caps name as the debtor. Now, Jesus Christ went into the money changers and flipped the table, right? So we're supposed to flip this table and let them know that, like, we're not the debtor, okay? We're the creditor. And there's power still in the way that even if you use your social and your all caps name, like, you can still use that entity. It's just that you're the beneficiary of that entity, the living beneficiary, right? That entity is the principal debtor. So when you say you're proud to be a citizen, you're essentially saying you're proud to be a debtor. Well, pride and debt are both sins. They're both things that take us away from our authority as stewards of the Most High's word, his finances, and his righteousness.
So let's go back to this credit, because I want people to really understand what you're talking about here. So our government went into debt that exceeded the amount of gold. It wasn't calibrated. So they made us, meaning the citizens, the debt payers of this compound interest that was accruing by our government.
Yeah. I believe it was Woodrow Wilson that basically sold us out to the central bank, and they're not a friend of ours, However, and let me backtrack real quick. They created the name. They created your all caps name, right? So we're using so when we incorporate the word and living by according to the word, that's the world, right? The world would be these Ephesians 6:12, like these powers that be, these powers of darkness in high places, So they gave you this entity to use, and we can use it, but when we identify as that entity, we're identifying as an entity of the world. We're supposed to be in the world, not of the world, right? So my bad. I feel like I didn't answer your question there, though. Essentially we came off the gold. We didn't have the means to pay to pay back the debt. So, they said, oh, well, we have all this property here, these entities that we created, and the people and their projected labor is enough to cover this debt. Like they're going to produce children, and they're going to register their children as wards of the state, and then it'll continue on. We'll have this endless supply of
chattel entities,
chattel slaves. Basically indentured servitude. Like it's all done by consent, and whether you know it or not, you consent to it. It's clean hands, right? Like they basically, they don't really hide it from you. I mean, that's the system itself is not inherently evil because equity prevails. So you are the beneficiary, and equity regards the beneficiary as the true owner. But you gotta make that very clear that the beneficiary has to perform as such, and enforce fiduciary law and enforce these trustees who would be any agent of the corporate state or any derivative thereof, like even a debt collector, a credit card company, a utility company, anyone that has access to your social would be trustee. So we immediately get into equity and trust law in that regard, and I don't want to lose any of the followers. So if you want to ask some more things to provide clarity.
Yeah, I definitely do, man, because this is so good. So for those that seen part one, we went over the history of the country becoming a corporation. In this episode, we're dialing into the 14th Amendment and how they skew words in order to have us willfully consent to this new corporation. And now that we have self-proclaimed ourselves as citizens, we are now playing in their game. Our government, we're just doing a timeline here, our government basically spent so much money that it went past the calibration of the gold standard, and now decided to make us, those willful citizens, the debtors to this debt. And we've essentially have compound interest that we're paying off, that the government is misplacing our money in the first place. Do I have that right so far?
Yes, sir. It's not our debt. It's their debt. And all debts are obligations of the United States, 18 United States Code 8. So what's that saying is that, like, we're in this system where, like, you know, it's a Federal Reserve system. It's not federal and there's no reserves, but all they offer us is their debt notes, right? Federal Reserve notes are debt instruments. So we're just pushing around debt and we're pledged as collateral for it. So the debt clock keeps rising and we're liable for it, you know, until we say otherwise, you know. And, you know, we could get back into the history a little bit of like what the 14th Amendment even is and how it came about. You know, the 13th Amendment, the Emancipation Proclamation, did not free anyone. All it did was transfer rights. And then they tried to get the freed chattel slaves, which, you know, was freed black folks, even though I don't like using the term black because that, you know, is civiliter mortis. It's like dead in the eyes of the court. It's a legal status. It's not a skin color, right? We're beings, right? I don't go by crayon colors, but anyway, you know, it was for them, and they're not dumb people, man. They said, no, we're not going to become subjects of your corporation after you just had us physically enslaved for so long. Why would we become, you know, financially enslaved for you, right? And then you know, these entities, these powers that be, enacted the Great Depression, man. They made everyone, you know, poor and hungry. So then those people and freed whites or whatever, everyone would be broke and hungry and accept benefits from the government. And that's how it snowballed from there. And then it just became the norm. You know, it's just kind of this thing that we incorporated over time as, you know, and then they come out with these songs, I'm proud to be an American, you know, proud to be a citizen or whatever. There's a difference, man. There's a difference between a private American and a U.S. citizen.
So what is the solution, right? We did the timeline. We see what happened in the country, and this is all doom. What could we do? What could we do? But there actually is a solution. And you speak of trust and equity law. So somebody watching this, first part 1 and part 2, what is their next step?
Yeah. So, okay. So first, seeing the world for what it is, right? We're dealing with entities. Okay. So your all caps name, your social, that is an entity. And that entity is what is the principal debtor. You know, you're the authorized agent for that entity. You cannot be an entity. A man cannot own anything. Only an entity can own something. We're living in a commercial world, right? So, you know, a lot of people, including myself, have gone through a status correction process. And what that entails is correcting the status of that entity back to a state citizen. So, you know, essentially you're asserting your rights under the original written constitution and reverting back to the state of the union that you were born on. And, you know, you're born on a state of the union. You're born on the land. You're registered into a state of. Okay. So people are catching on to these little nuances. You know, when you're registered into a state of, which a state of New Jersey is a subsidiary of Washington, D.C., right? The United States. So, yeah, so seeing the world for what it is, seeing this thing as an entity that it's not you, you know, you're just managing the entity. You're the authorized agent of the entity.
Okay. So when you say you corrected your status, the government created this entity. Mm-hmm. And they have been this fictional entity, this persona of you, and you are correcting that status as not a federal entity, but of the state that you're born in?
Yeah, so it's still the entity that they created, right? And that, you know, you're correcting it to non-citizen national. So, all right, here we go. This is actually a very easy explanation here. I got my passport right here, right? So this status is corrected. It looks like any other passport. But if you look at your passport and look at the paragraph before your picture, right here. Where are we at? The Secretary of the State of the United States of America hereby requests all whom it may concern to permit the citizen/national of the United States. This page. We have both statuses already. Okay, everyone's a national by being born on the land here. And when we get registered into the corporation, which happens through the birth registration process, which, it's actually fraud because they don't tell your mother all the nuances and details of what that entails, but again, a contract is a contract. So a contract is law. So if you contract yourself over as a ward of the state or your mother does it on your behalf, that entity is a citizen. And when you correct that status, you go to 8 United States Code 1101 A21 or A22. Read them both. You could choose which one you want to, which one fits best for you, which one you understand more. And they're both definitions of non-citizen. So essentially what you're saying is I was born on a territory outside of the United States, which is Washington, D.C. I'm not a citizen, resident, or person of Washington, D.C. I was born on a territory outside of it, which is the state of the Union of New Jersey, right?
Got you. And by doing so, now we do this process, right? We change our status, and this now, what changes for Shane when the status is changed? And you told me privately it's been a few years now. What changes? Like now, what happens?
Nothing, man. I mean, I don't want to say nothing, but like in your day-to-day life, you've restored your rights under the original written constitution. You've created a paper trail. You've put all these agencies on notice. That's how I do it. That's how I did it. And for anyone listening, I invite you to join, this community that I've been blessed to be a part of. It's called America's Assembly. The process is free. The hustle's sold separately, man. You got to get into the information, and it's so powerful, man. Even when you just download the paperwork, read through it, look up everything on it, you'll understand what it's saying, where it's bringing you. And when you send it out, before you go get your updated passport, you put all the agencies on notice. So you're letting them know it's due process. You're sending them constructive notice. You're saying, this is who I am. If you don't rebut what I said, this is a maxim of law. Unrebutted affidavit stands as truth. So if they don't rebut what you said, then that's the truth, and they got to update their system. So essentially, nothing changes though, like in your day-to-day life, But what you can do is, you'll be empowered to file differently on behalf of your employer. You might submit a W-8 BEN instead of a W-9 because you're a foreigner. You might you're going to be encouraged to stop using your social, because the more you use your social, if you don't endorse that signature properly, they're just going to keep pinging you as the debtor, So as you get deeper into the information, you might, you're going to be empowered, I guess I'll say, because you don't have to do anything, right? We have free will to do anything we want, man. We have the unlimited right to contract.
Which is in the Constitution. I forgot where in your Constitution, but extra piece. With the protections of contracting.
Yeah, because if we didn't, man, we would all be slaves, to the point where,
right. The importance of contracting. Sorry. So you said, I don't want to gloss over this. So Social Security card. Shane, What's wrong with a Social Security card? What's wrong with the Social Security? I thought that's as American as apple pie.
Yeah.
What's up with the Social Security, bro?
Read the back of that card, brother. It says property of the Social Security Administration, meaning it's not yours. It's not you. It's just an entity that was assigned to you. And, we go our whole lives identifying, not knowing, right? People, when the Social Security first came out, people knew about the card. There was pamphlets and commercials or whatever they had on TV and stuff saying, how to use it. Don't just give it away to anyone and stuff like this. We've been so kind of indoctrinated and ingrained in our society that we throw that number around like it's us, like we are that number, and that's where people really have some trouble or mental hurdles breaking down the fact that your credit card is tied to your social. So is your driver's license, though. Your driver's license is essentially a social security card, because that entity, the all caps name, is what's represented on that identification.
What is the government doing nefariously with this social security card that it's a problem? What is the action in which they're doing that's violating we the people?
Yeah. So, essentially, everything is God's creation, right? Even the governments, they submit to him. So they can't operate without his permission, but they get it by your permission. So they are, okay, let me take it back, because what the Social Security number is, it's a Cesta QV trust, right? So it's an implied trust created by the government. And, your mother signs the baby over as ward of the state. And, the entity, the all caps name, is beneficiary of this Cesta QV trust. The baby is surety for the trust, right? Well, Proverbs 11:15 says, "He who surety for a stranger shall smart for it. He who hates suretyship is sure." And the Cesta QV trust came out of London, the Great Fires of London in 1666, right? And they just it wasn't inherently evil, but the whole city burned down or whatever. So they declared everyone dead, lost at sea, right? And what you had to do was come back and claim your estate, claim that you were alive. Say, hey, listen, I'm here. It's all good. Don't worry about it. I got it covered. And we can still do that today, right? Through like a non-decadent letter and things like this, where we, take over the estate. So essentially what the government's doing that is evil is not telling you how the entity actually operates. When we just sign our name and we don't signify that we're the beneficiary or something like that, or endorse the signature properly, we're taking on the position of trustee. So we're taking on full liability for an entity that we didn't create. If that makes sense.
100%. No, I would definitely does, man. And I think so the first step is for them to understand what exactly happened, which we covered. We started talking about, we dialed into that 14th Amendment. We are now showing what they put in place to basically lock us into this grid. And your solution is through the lens of being in control of your affairs and more of a trust, being the beneficiary and being the beneficiary of a trust, you're saying, right? To get off this debt system and be the creditor.
Yes.
Right. And so now, so people are listening to this now, where should they be learning? Like, where are some good outlets? You said American Assembly. What are some other outlets or some books that you recommend that has helped you along the way?
Yeah, the first book that everyone should read is called Meet Your Straw Man by David E. Robinson. You could find it for like $5 on Amazon, man. It's a super easy read, super short book, condensed info, gives you the foundation. The next one is 0% by Duval Day. Incredible information. I mean, dude, he's covered from A to Z. It's very in-depth. Another one is called The Unincorporation by James Billing. That's a great book. And then the last one I'll leave you with is Fruit from a Poisonous Tree by Melvin Stamper.
Yeah. Great book. I'm actually reading it now, man. A lot of great info on the 14th Amendment. It dives deep into the 14th Amendment. I also wanted to, before we let you go, Shane, I wanted to go into some of the packages you have on your page. I'm going to put your page up now. What type of services are you providing on your IG page?
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I'm still getting my offerings together and compiled in a way that I can, really help people understand and execute these trusts, but it gets very in depth, and it takes a lot of study that people got to get into themselves. Right. So what I do personally is, I hold all my assets in a private irrevocable trust, and it's a non-grantor trust. So there's a lot of nuances with trust that people want to get familiar with, and when you start talking about trust, it gets so in depth because everything is a trust, and you should be seeing everything through the lens of equity. So when we create our own trusts, there's so much power in holding our assets and everything in these trusts. So I offer an irrevocable trust that is just the most private trust there is, and it's an unincorporated association, so you can hold your business in it and everything. And then I utilize revocable trust as well to take power of attorney over my name and my social, and I use that as like a pass-through trust, so I don't hold any assets in it, but it's super powerful in taking power of attorney and speaking with the government and these entities through a third party entity rather than through your social.
I have actually one more question. So as we're going through this great awakening, people are waking up and finding out about all this information. I really feel that if people are trying to get their affairs in order, that this is at the forefront. And you do so well breaking this stuff down. I'm looking forward to doing 10 episodes with you, bro. Do you have any advice on if they are going to start looking at this information? Do you have any advice on what type of lens, what type of paradigm when they're taking this in to properly digest this stuff?
Yeah, man. I get into the Word of God, man, and I just ask that you pray for revelation and discernment, and it's going to cause you to isolate a little bit, man, and lean into that. Get into the information. Understand that the whole world will be deceived, right? Like it'll feel like the weight of the world's on your shoulders almost, and like you gotta comprehend all these foreign things that obviously we're not taught in the public education system, right? Anything that's public is going to be through the lens of the entities that handed this indoctrinated system down to us, right? So you got to set some time aside, man, to make time to study, make time to understand what's going on, how we got caught up in it. But then don't fight it, don't get overwhelmed by it, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed by this information. I would say just go into that secret place. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall be covered, right? Like really just ask God to continue showing you in your life. I've seen people come to this information from all different angles. Some people are dealing with a foreclosure on a mortgage or something like that. Well, some people are dealing with, a lot of people come through the jail system and, find out this information that way, that there was all these tax filings filed on their behalf and, bonds set in their name and stuff like that. And I guess I would just say, get into the Word, man. I can't stress that enough, but get into the Word in a way of like, how do I apply this to my life? How do I take this and transfer it into, an applicable way of living, and that's what comes about, is that it's not just like one form you're going to fill out and then you're free from a system. It's like, no, man, it's a whole lifestyle change. Like, you got to be willing to change, right? We talk about repentance, and what's that, Romans 12:2. And it's, repentance isn't just asking for forgiveness. Repentance is the changing of the mind and the changing of the ways. So it's how you do things, how you interact with the world.
Very powerful, man. Guys, definitely get over to Sovereign Redeemed. I will put his handles here. Great information. It's been great building with you, brother. I can't wait to do part 3. And I appreciate your time and energy, brother.
Thank you, man. Likewise. And excited to keep the ball rolling here, and just pray for the world, man. Pray for everyone to get into the information and empower themselves, right? Take dominion. Take dominion. Genesis 1:26.
Let's do it. Episode 32, and we're out.
Peace.